Professor Doyle Young. It's good to be with you again. We're opening up this particular lecture talking about Chapter 7 in your book. This area of personality traits and leadership traits is probably one of the most challenging to understand from a research point of view because there is just actually so much research on the topic that has started as early as in the 1930s with a researcher called Marston who researched a large number of personality traits and styles. But where I'd like to start today is just sort of summarize where we are in relationship to why we're studying what we're studying. As you may recall, if you turn to your book on page figure 7.1, I think it's page 214 in your book, you'll see in there the bottom three blocks. And just to reiterate, we have been talking in earlier lectures on the block that is referenced to values, interests, motives, and goals. You'll see in one of the other blocks on the left there, it talks about intelligence. And so this lecture will really be talking about personality traits and types and intelligence. The personality research and work is really focused more, frankly, on how we come into our leadership roles fairly hardwired. That is the nature versus nurture argument, that we were born with these leadership traits or skills or styles, if you will, not skills, but style. That's sort of where we are. The earlier research on this topic by Marston talked about four basic, and this is not in your book, but four basic personality types. They are the dominant type that are very challenge and task-oriented. There are the inducement types that are very relational oriented. These tend to be very good salespeople. There is the style that's particularly focused to security needs. This is the compliant, attention to detail individual. And then the steady, the last style is the steady person, which it really focuses on getting work done and is very methodical. These four basic styles, if you look at all the research that's been going on over the years, the research has really been focusing on expanding on these styles and using them, frankly, in research in order to validate what we know in terms of how to develop and to select leaders in organizations. The selection part of this, of course, has to be quite valid and reliable. That is, are we really selecting people that have a high probability of moving into leadership roles, and are those selections sort of reproducible in terms of other populations? We do know that there are cultural characteristics that make the use of these psychometric tools, that is, tools used for adult selection and assessment, if they are validated, the cultural differences amongst these tools makes the tools need to be revalidated with these other cultures and populations. So in this chapter, you know, I think the thing to recognize as you read it is to understand that we're dealing with something that's probably more focused to nature in terms of people coming hardwired, though we recognize that there is a role that skill can play in this as people are able, as they mature in their skills and get more experience under their belt, is to strengthen some of the areas that were heretofore weaker, or where they come into the world with a style, if you will, does not lend itself to being, for example, outgoing, but people can learn to improve through their skill and development the quotient that may be low for them, if you will, when they get into the world. So this chapter is really giving you an overview of the various research models. And keep in mind, these are not all the research models that are out there, that they are selecting models based on what the particular author seems to like, and things that are examples for the author around things that they want you to know. Having said that, I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of what leadership traits are about. Successful leaders essentially share three abilities. The first is the ability to get along with others and build teams. It's so clear that the leadership, this leadership quality of getting along with others and building teams is an absolute critical element for progressive leaders. As we talked in a previous lecture, a big part of leadership is relational, since we live in a relational universe with human beings, and the ability to communicate with others, to display the values appropriate for leadership is highly critical, and the ability to work and develop teams. Today, the world is far too complex for leaders not to recognize that that they need to build these solid teams, and the team members themselves each bring a unique and a blend, if you will, of knowledge, skills, and abilities or competencies into the situation. The second ability is to make sound and timely decisions. Leadership, is really about making decisions. Once the information is in, and we talked at the very initial lecture about the kinds of information or data that leaders get. So the ability to make sound and timely decisions. I mean, ultimately, the test of behavior for leaders is their ability to make good decisions. If you look at some of the icons of leadership in the world, while they make a lot of mistakes, they are recognized, let's say if they're in political environments, of making good decisions, timely decisions. There is criticism a lot in the media for leaders who make slow decisions. And the world is moving so fast that there is, frankly, an expectation that leaders make fast and good decisions. The third leadership trait is to get things done. If you look at some of the prevailing definitions of management, one prevailing one that has been very popular in the Western world is that management is defined as getting things done through and with people. And let's go back through that. Done through and with other people. So that whole word of through implies that there's a delegation process, that the leader is delegating out responsibility, is delegating out the authority to individuals and teams to get that work which is defined as essentially activities and projects and scope and tasks to get those things done through and with other people. So there is this whole process of leaders delegating, of creating the environments that followers will get things done. Fortunately, that the challenge today is perhaps only a relatively small percentage of leaders possess all of the attributes that we talked about. That is the ability to get along with others and build teams, the ability to make sound and timely decisions, and the ability to really get things done. In your book, you'll find a section called the Great Man Theory. And the Great Man Theory attempted to prove that leaders and followers are fundamentally different. And the conclusions of that research was that leaders were not qualitatively different than followers, that intelligence, initiative, stress tolerance, responsibility, friendliness, and dominance were moderately related to leadership success. So if we take a look at that, then let's sort of go a little bit further and ask the question: what is personality? Personality is the impression a person makes on others. It's underlying, it's unseen structures and processes inside a person explain why we behave the way we do. So personality might very well be defined also in terms of another word, that is style. We talked about that just a few minutes ago, that how a person is wired coming into the world. Traits, if we take a look at traits, refers to the recurring regularities or trends in a person's behavior. It's the kinds of behaviors that a person is predictable about. And the theory in this area maintains that people behave the way they do because of the strengths of the traits they possess. So personality traits are useful in explaining why people act fairly consistently in different situations, and knowing differences in personality traits can help predict more accurately how people would tend to act in different situations. You know, one of the things that we like about leaders is the fact that leaders and their personality traits are known to be predictable in certain kinds of ways. We know that perhaps they will take a bold approach, a reasoned approach that is highly intelligent, that comes with it importance for leaders, for example, to defend their actions and to act in the best course of things and bring a can-do attitude. So leadership behavior, if we go a little bit further with this, reflects an interaction between personality traits and various situational factors. And what we mean by that is the person brings their style, they bring their traits, the predictable traits most of the time, and they apply those to various situations. And so those various situations can mean anything from things that bring with them low stress and tolerance to high stress situations. So if we take one of the theories approached in the book, Table 7.1 talks about the Hogan personality dimensions, and there you'll see various personality inventory dimensions, and Hogan talks about essentially a 5-factor model. There are some factors that are 4 factors, some that are 5, and you see others in there. So that model is, for you to understand what these models are about, the models are essentially different ways to overlay our understanding about how leaders, the dimensions of leadership traits and behaviors. And they find, my recommendation is you look at several models, and you may find one that fits how you look at the world in terms of a learner. It's nice to get acquainted with a number of models. Now, the Hogan model provides an explanation for leaders' and followers' tendency to act in consistent ways over time. And again, in Hogan's case, and as with these other models, they are behavioral manifestations of personality traits. And in Hogan's case, he says that these traits are exhibited automatically and unconsciously. And all of these models are developed by researchers in some form, and again, they're useful for profiling the qualities of leaders and profiling the qualities of what successful leaders look like. Then these researchers and the larger domain of organizational development people and human resource people throughout the world are able to help select, train, and justify, if you will, why certain leaders are selected over others, and given the universally different situations across different cultures. One of the other things is to recognize, again, to emphasize, is any of the tools that are used in an organizational settings need to be sort of justified about why these tools are being used. Are they essentially good measures of leadership potentials? And are they predictive? Can they make predictions about how the typical behavior at work, how these people will perform? People tend to describe others using trait-like terms, and so that is the basis for a lot of the research there. And there also is an assumption that with this research that all behavior is under conscious control, that we make decisions as human beings because we apply self-control. There's a saying that self-control is the best control. So people make decisions about the behaviors that they're exhibiting and to build relationships with people. So the personality types and traits is an area that as you get into it, realize that it has some common things that we've talked about just over these few minutes of introduction to this chapter. Figure 7.2 in your book talks about leadership potential profile, and keep in mind that when we say potential profile, that is the leaders exhibit these behaviors, these traits, if you will, and our testing of them, or in the behavior, do they show these behaviors openly? And the figure there shows you several of those: adjustment, ambition, sociability, interpersonal sensitivity, prudence, inquisitive, and learning. What is their learning approach? What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit, not so much about why leaders fail, but I'd like to talk about one of the elements of leadership, and it comes to personality, and sort of the output of what leaders, the output of the behavior of leaders. And I want to talk about trust. And this might be a good place to put it. I could also place this sort of mini lecture on trust in another chapter, for example, on style, on culture. But I'd like to talk it because it really is one of the outcomes of leadership traits and personality. Personality is, frankly, in the research, one of the determinants of trust, and it's really something important that one gets in their childhood. Under stress, the inclination to trust or mistrust comes out of early childhood experiences, and it grows in terms of important characteristic as leaders mature. Let me define trust and mistrust that are essentially operative in any organization. And telling the truth, integrity, directness, and credibility are often terms used for trust. Trust is the ability to develop predictable relationships between people, in which people trust the decisions that the people that leaders are making, and likewise leaders are trusting the subordinates or the followers in the situation. When people trust each other, decision quality improves, execution or implementation is enhanced. People tend to avoid discussing mistrust. Instead, they act on it. Trust should never be confused with affection. Trust must be adjusted for difference in task, the situation, and the other person. Trust often reveals relevant, comprehensive information about the nature of what people are trusting. That's usually very task-oriented. I trust that you're going to be able to get this job done. When there's trust, people make accurately, timely statements. They contribute realistic data for problem solving. And trust, people are open or receptive to influence from others. When there's trust, people accept interdependence because they believe others will abide by their agreements. When there's trust, people have little need to impose control on others, and the level of trust in a group or a team determines the ability to locate needed competence and use it to solve problems. When trust is there, the elements of trust include Information. People are sharing information openly. Second is influence. Those who do not trust resist others' attempts to influence. They suspect their goals, reject their views, and deflect their suggestions. Denies or ignores their evaluation of results, but wants to accept and follow his views. So influence, how much people will accept influence by another person, is one of the keys to trust. The next key to trust, and you know it's working, is control. The lack of trust causes people to minimize dependence on others because they feel they cannot rely on them. They try to impose controls when coordination is necessary. They resist attempts to control their behavior. When others encounter low trust behavior, they hesitate to reveal information again. They reject influence and evade control. And there is a deficient exchange of information. It's just not enough. And self-control will be displaced by external controls. So this whole area of trust is actually one of the important keys in outcomes of leadership behavior. When trust is there, it leads to enhanced problem solving. High trust groups, for example, if we not just talk about individual to individual, but let's say leader to group or leader to team. When trust is there, when high trust is there, defined goals and problems are clearly and realistically set. There's agreement to search for alternatives and the importance of creating more creative and innovative solutions. When there's high trust, people were satisfied with their problem-solving efforts. When there's high trust, there's greater motivation to implement the conclusions. When there's high trust, there's more of a team, if you will. So higher levels of trust create more effective and efficient teams that communicate with the leader and with each other. And lastly, when there is high trust, there's greater loyalty and less desire to leave for another job. So I'm emphasizing trust because it is one of the key outcomes of productive leadership behaviors, the ability to create teams, which again is crucial to develop one-on-one relationships with the leader and the subordinate. So that summarizes at a high-level view this chapter without getting in too much detail, which can be read within the chapter. The only other element to this would be, I would say, to discuss or to take a look at the intelligence references in the latter part of this chapter, and to get to understand that a little bit better. I will leave off with just saying that intelligence really is a person's all-around effectiveness and activities directed by thought. Intelligent leaders are fast learners. They make better assumptions. They're better at creating a compelling vision and strategizing. They can develop better solutions to problems. They can see more of the primary and secondary implications of their decisions. And frankly, intelligent leaders are quicker on their feet than leaders who are less intelligent. So I encourage you to get into the chapter, and thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed this lecture.